Hey, what's going on, guys? So I figured, with the draft about a month away or so, it would be smart to start taking a look at some of the players that may be available for us in round one. I'm hoping with these videos, maybe I can get through enough to where we can see some middle round gems and maybe some later round ones as well too. But for the higher known prospects, it would be good to get some additional information for those that don't necessarily like researching and trying to check out the game footage and all that, because at the end of the day, we're not getting paid for this, as awesome as that would be, but still to kind of know who's who. For starters, we're going to go with the wide receiver position. So one of the ones that are expected to go near the high end, which I think anywhere between pick 7 onward is about where we can see, any of the receivers at the top end of the pool get selected. So with that said, we're going to go with Garrett Wilson here today. So there's a few sites, and I'll put them in the description links for you guys as well. I like going to these for the descriptions. It breaks down a lot of stuff. It even shows me which game films that they were looking at, and things like that, and just some usual information I won't see if I'm just taking a look at something maybe from NFL.com or something like that. So feel free to check those out. But let's go ahead and get into it. So there's a couple of things when we talk about a wide receiver being in the number one draft position, of course, any round one target in general, right? And they need to kind of essentially have the complete package, or at least two traits that clearly separate them from what would be like the tier two prospects. That's either elite speed. Sometimes you can just cap it as elite athleticism in general. If you have and it's not a wide receiver, but let's say a Byron Jones type workout, right? You have a ridiculous broad and vertical jump. Your three cone drills and stuff are 6'4" below, something crazy. Then you have the physical traits that somebody is going to feel like they can develop to make you the best route runner possible, and whatever it is that they're going to need for their offense. So when we're talking about Garrett Wilson, originally he wasn't necessarily known for his elite athleticism. But to just dive into it, let's kind of get into his physical profile and some of what we've seen from the combine for him. So he's 6 foot, about 188 pounds. He's going to be somewhere in that mold. The 40 time, it looks like we had a 4.3840 for him, which is excellent. Anything sub 4.4 is great. Um, Looks like hands measured 9 and 5/8, arms 31 and 5/8, and then he has a 77.5 wingspan. I'm not huge on those particular details. Again, not part of the franchise that's going to draft them. So at the end of the day, the oohs and ahs are great. Those aren't immediate things I'm going to be looking at. But he's young. We're looking at someone that'll be about 22 going into their rookie season. And then when we break down some of the things, so let's see, 2019 year, 30 receptions, 432 yards, 5 touchdowns, not bad. 2020, he gets 43 receptions, 723 yards, 6 touchdowns. And then we see him explode in 2021 with 70 receptions, 1,058 yards, and then 12 touchdowns. And it looks like he's been able to average a pretty solid amount per reception, anywhere from 14.4 to the high end of 16.8 in 2020. So there's big playability that's going to be there depending on how the teams try to insert him into the offense, right? There's going to be guys that, unfortunately, they're going to be gadget guys. There's going to be guys that really only need to be utilized in screens and bubble situations, stuff like that. So we'll see kind of where he fits. But 4.3840, vertical jump 36 feet. Excuse me, broad jump looks like 100 and, or excuse me, vertical jump was 36. I want to say this is supposed to be inches. Correct me if I'm wrong, but broad jump 123 inches, and then he did his shuttle at 4.36 seconds. So these are numbers that are pretty solid across the board. I don't think anybody necessarily expected him to hit like the 4.2s, but I was hearing a lot of rumors about him being kind of a speedster and stuff like that. So seeing the 4.38 was great, especially considering some of what we'll get into in terms of the general scouting info for him, right? So he wasn't necessarily known for his elite athleticism, which helps with seeing his 40 time as well as the shuttle. Um, his acceleration burst into kind of his full full gear speed is pretty great, but it looks like the consensus is that he's not going to be a world beater. He might catch some people if he gets the right route run and kind of takes the best angle possible, and then he's shifty, so that'll help him as well, and he'll be able to take some of those to the house. But don't expect him to just be running go routes the entire time, and he runs away from somebody. Um, it seems like he's also very studious based on reports. He's a bit of an above average route runner, not top tier. So, it's not like an Amari Cooper or anything like that coming out, or a Chris Olave, I would even say. But he's definitely up there in terms of being proficient and being able to get himself open. Above average hands, again, not a world beater. We're not going to see a Mike Evans type situation, even though they don't have the same build. Where if it's thrown to him, he's essentially going to get it. But he can pluck some balls out of the air. I just seen a GIF or a meme, excuse me, but it was kind of a highlight reel catch, and he was pretty up there. Kind of did a little Randy Moss type situation, but he was primarily used on deep slash crossing routes quite a bit in his time at Ohio, which led to a lot of the high yards per receptions that we're kind of seeing there. We'll see if it's stands the test in the NFL, where he's not going to be able to get away with the same things. The NFL is going to kind of have a little bit more of a standard formula that they're going to want to stick to. Ideally, we'll see. Coaches have been getting a lot more creative recently, but we'll see what is the situation that he ends up going to is. He is a yards after catch, bit of a master though, a savant, if you will. So if you catch him in the middle of the field and you don't you don't have a little bit of assistance there, he's probably going to wiggle away from you and be able to use some of that shiftiness in order to make something happen for plus yards or taking it to the house, as I mentioned earlier. He does have some pretty good body control, being able to contort and do certain catches that you won't see from the majority of the league. There are going to be obviously some people that I wouldn't put him in the elite tier, but he's definitely above average, B minus maybe at the moment. And then kind of like we mentioned with the yards after catch ability, he's going to be able to catch in motion and make things happen from there. So if you have a accurate quarterback and you're kind of manufacturing certain things and not necessarily pigeonholing him with certain routes, you got you a guy that potentially is going to pop on an every game basis. Even if you don't see anything crazy like a 200-yard game, 100-yard, multiple touchdown type situations, you got a guy that's going to be able to come in some critical situations and make it happen for you. Now, there's a lot of negatives here. I'm not going to get into, a million and one of what they had on the report, but two of the biggest things, it really comes down to, due to his body size right now, and how he was played in Ohio, his strength is going to need to improve, and he's going to either have to work on some better releases or figure out, what he wants to do in mastering his routes a little bit better. And then the second piece is going to be the drops. So I don't have a number for you guys or anything like that, but he has had a fair amount of drops due to concentration lapses, according to what it says, and some of the stuff that I've seen from the highlight tapes, or game film, I should say, not necessarily highlight tapes. But essentially, it all boils down to him trying to get his head turned around or make a move before he actually secures and keeps the catch locked down. So something that should be relatively easy, but bigger, stronger, faster guys at the next level. We'll see if it persists right away for him or if it's something he can clear up kind of through a training camp in preseason. And then I guess just to sum it all, from one of the sites that I've seen, it kind of capped his ideal role as being a slot receiver, and then his best offense will essentially be one where they'll manufacture some catches and then, of course, let him run the traditional routes that'll come up. But essentially being in a slot with the shiftiness, yards after catch ability will kind of let him maximize his natural skill set instead of kind of forcing things as a boundary receiver. He did see a lot of catches on quick looks as well, which is another thing to keep in mind. It's not like, 3 seconds have gone off the clock and he's making things happen on a mid-deep route. Again, not top tier route running, but still, it's not necessarily a knock against them, just something to be aware of. He's not somebody that's going to 100% of the time manufacture touches. And like I mentioned with the strength and improvement in releases, That's due to him kind of struggling against press coverage, specifically when he was on the boundary against the sideline. So that's something that a team is going to have to be aware of and kind of work with him and have a plan on. One of the things I would just say to keep in mind as a whole, though, they said, and it's some Robert Saleh and JD has kind of mentioned in one form or another, it generally is going to take receivers 2 or 3 years to kind of hit their stride and blossom into who they might be for the future and long term in the NFL. So this is just initially kind of what they have going down. I did think it was interesting, the pro player comparison that we got for Garrett Wilson was Deontay Johnson. So, he's somebody that did see some pretty immediate success. Things might not have necessarily continued to work out, but again, given the situation that they were in, Ben Roethlisberger on the downswing of his career and stuff like that, Mason Rudolph as your backup quarterback and things when stuff went awry. Um, who knows? Maybe Deontay Johnson goes back on the uprise. But either way, that's some of the info behind Garrett Wilson. Again, keep in mind, I'm going to drop the links to some of the scouting reports that I like to see and go by, which have rung pretty true for the most part with a lot of the players that I've seen come out of drafts in the past. And other than that, I'm looking forward to dropping some more for some of the other potential picks for the New York Jets at number 4 as well as number 10. Not sure if I'll stick with all wide receivers as I go or if I'll kind of hit on each position just so I can kind of maximize the time here. But either way, let me know what you guys think I should cover next. And looking forward to some more content. Peace.